Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me. My name's Philip Blake. We'll start this, sorry, I'm Philip Blake from EC Council. I will start this meeting in a couple of minutes' time, just we'll allow everyone else to join. Thanks, everyone, for waiting. We're just going to give it another minute or so just to let a few of the latecomers join, and we'll start in about a minute's time. The rate of people joining seems to have slowed down a little bit, so I'll just sort of kick off right away. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Philip Blake. I'm the Regional Director for EC Council, and yeah, today I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction to ethical hacking and penetration testing. Yeah, thank you very much to GOPAS for inviting me in to take a little bit of time to chat with you. And yeah, we've got this agenda for you today. So I know some of you may have been on the previous Certified Network Defender webinar, so I'm going to do my best to sort of go through the threat landscape slides again. For those of you who haven't been on there, I'll try to keep it a little bit briefer. We do have a couple of other items. So quick intro to EC Council, a little bit around the threat landscape and some of the cyber attacks which have been going on in recent sort of weeks and months. I'm going to have a look at sort of what is ethical hacking, penetration testing. We're going to do a little bit around sort of the CEH version 11, some of the new modules in that course, some of the new attack vectors, all these sorts of elements, and then I'm also going to sort of look at talk about sort of the ethical hacker leaderboard and some of and who is looking for ethical hackers. And yeah, finally I've just got a 5-question quiz right at the end, so it's just going through sort of some of a couple of questions just to sort of test those who are looking for a little bit more engagement. It's around some of the tools and techniques utilized within ethical hacking. But so yeah, stick around for that. And we'll dive straight into it. So for those of you who don't know, EC Council globally, we're one of the largest cybersecurity training and certification bodies. We've worked with various governments, training centres, such as GOPAS, for example, academic institutions, essentially in pursuing or furthering the education and training of cybersecurity professionals. We've got over 230,000 certified members that have worked with the Department of Defense, the FBI, the Pentagon, and numerous other Fortune 500 companies to sort of all in their pursuit of ensuring that we have the right professionals in place to mitigate against cyber attacks. Now, onto sort of the threat landscape side of things. So, unless you've been living under a rock, I'm sure you'd be fully aware that there's been a number of cyber attacks over the last few years. We know well, so much so that the World Economic Forum is holding cyber attacks, or what was cyber attacks, in such high regard that it has included them on their 2021 risk report. The rhetoric has changed around what used to be data breaches or used to be cyber attacks. It's now being called cybersecurity failure, and we'll come on to a couple of the examples a little bit later on. In terms of the one in particular, if you were on the CND webinar, we draw down on the likes of the water poisoning in Florida, for example. So actual sort of physical attack, also actual cyber attacks on critical national infrastructure, on industrial control systems, and yes, as such, we obviously touch on that in the new CEH course. So as you can see from that risk report, the only things which are higher really than cybersecurity are sort of those sort of natural factors, climate change, etc., and obviously the infectious diseases, which we're all a little bit bored of hearing about at the moment. But as such, because of this sort of transition to cybersecurity failure, we're sort of seeing both short-term, mid-term, and long-term cyber threat, a long-term impact of cyber attacks. So, in terms of sort of what that looks like in what has been going on in the world, and again, I know I covered these in CND, so I'll just kind of focus on these briefly so we can spend a little bit more time on the ethical hacking course. The three that we sort of focus on: the Colonial Pipeline, the Florida water poisoning, and HSE. I've actually just got back from Ireland, and it is something which everyone is talking about there. And obviously, if we sort of compare what happened with the Colonial Pipeline and with HSE, and the Colonial Pipeline obviously deciding to pay the ransom of 4.4 million, I believe they decided to pay that within about 24 hours, and then HSE, who took a very strong stance of not paying the ransom. There are various estimates out there, but around sort of the 16 million euro mark was sort of what was being thrown around in some sort of professional circles. But also, if we compare the two of those, sort of the ethics behind one of those organizations essentially paying so that they can get their systems back online as quickly as possible, to essentially paying to get their oil pipeline back up as quickly as possible, whereas the other being a healthcare company, the Republic of Ireland's health service, they ultimately sort of decided not to pay, and as such, how many appointments were cancelled. Sort of there were examples of cancer treatments being cancelled, of heart outpatient heart procedure outpatients having to have them their patient appointments cancelled. So it comes down to the fact that there was one organisation willing to sort of pay for oil, but the other was not willing to pay, or the Irish government not willing to pay when it came to individuals' health, which is depending on sort of the ethical side of things, where you stand. And then the final one, which is sort of that we always draw upon. So those two, obviously, for financial gain, and then you have the likes of the Florida water poisoning, which was sort of a purely malicious attack and trying to sort of harm people, or maybe just trying to they increase the sodium hydroxide levels in the water, and just a quick look at what happens if that water had managed to get into the system. There would have been that sort of level of hydrogen peroxide would have sodium hydroxide, even not the hair bleach, of sodium hydroxide would have done a significant damage to a number of individuals, made a number of individuals significantly sick. So ultimately, the threats are out there. We can name any number of, it's now becoming sort of evident on a daily basis. So just here in the UK, yesterday it came to light that a number of new ticket machines at one of the train operators in the UK got hit by a ransomware attack. So they were only put in recently within the last 2 months, those ticket machines. Yeah, I haven't actually sort of managed to have a chance to scroll the news today, but I am sure that somewhere there has been another cyber attack, which ultimately, they're now becoming a daily occurrence rather than sort of once in a blue moon activities that we hear about, and especially when with the likes of the Florida water poisoning, when you are going after something as critical as a water supply, something which is crucial to human life, it does sort of put things into perspective. So coming on to what is ethical hacking, so in terms of so we have obviously like the likes of our the certified ethical hacking course that we sort of that we developed for so essentially to help train our cybersecurity professionals in mitigating against this. So the idea is that ethical hackers are focused on ensuring and on gaining authorized access rather than you can call them white hat hackers sometimes, but there is a number of common vulnerabilities which ethical hackers will focus on. So broken authentication, so allowing users to bypass the authentication process on a web application, for example. So the attacker can perform automated attacks such as credential surfing, which are obviously it's part of ethical hacking to test that broken authentication. Security misconfigurations, obviously having this vulnerability is listed. It's listed among those top vulnerabilities on OWASP, and so it is. It's about the misconception that an organization has with regard to its security posture. So they may think that things have they've been configured correctly. So that's where ethical hackers come in to ensure that sort of the organization sort of has this false notion of having a secure environment, whereas the ethical hackers will locate those security gaps and make sure that they harden them before so the black hat hackers or the malicious attackers try to get in. Injection attacks, this is quite a broad attack vector where essentially an attacker injects trusted input into the application. This code or query gets processed by interpreter, which alters the execution of the program. The ethical hacker sort of penetrates the application coding, can locate the weaknesses or the weak corners that would allow an attacker to inject the code and obviously harden them as where they can, or feed back to the security team. We know that sort of components with known vulnerabilities, and obviously there are new vulnerabilities emerging every on a daily and weekly basis, even from sort of large organizations. These sorts of vulnerabilities are often ignored by developers. Secure development has become critical over the recent years, and hence those ignored elements that are exploited by malicious attackers. And there are automated tools that can be used to identify vulnerable components to some extent, but with few, whereas there are a few vulnerabilities that take slightly deeper intrusions to be found and removed. So sensitive data exposure, obviously, sort of a bit of a cornerstone of what ethical hackers do. The hackers ultimately what they're after is sort of the data in your system. So how many leaked credentials are there sort of on the dark web, whether it be sort of critical, so credit card information, PII, there's all that sort of personal information that has been leaked. Again, it's sort of listed sort of within those top 10 vulnerabilities on OWASP, and it can be sort of put critical data at risk. The data may include and so as well as sort of credit card numbers, it could be sort of healthcare data, national insurance numbers, but ultimately sort of when these are exposed, may result in when these are exposed, it may sort of result in a data breach. And once ethical hackers sort of have listed their findings as well, obviously this is something which is done by penetration testers as well, and the idea is that they shore up those sides of things. So those are just sort of a day in the life, a few elements which are in the day of a life that an ethical hacker may may employ. Now, there's 5 steps of ethical hacking. There's reconnaissance, scanning, gaining access, maintaining access, and clearing tracks. Now, all of these sound relatively self-explanatory, but we will run through these. We'll run through these one by one. First in the ethical hacking methodology is that sort of reconnaissance. This is sort of also can be also be known as the footprint or information gathering phase. The goal of this preparatory phase is to collect as much information as possible. Before launching the attack, the attacker will collect all the necessary information about the targets. That sort of data can contain passwords, essential details of employees, sort of more information, general critical information about the company. That's ultimately sort of what those sort of ethical hackers are looking for there. And there's various tools and there's various sort of tools and techniques which they can utilize. So reconnaissance is an essential phase of ethical hacking, and it helps identify which attacks can be launched and how likely the organization and an organization's systems may fall vulnerable to those particular attacks. Also, some of the other sort of reconnaissance and footprinting techniques to collect data, such as TCP and UDP services, vulnerabilities, specific IP addresses, host networks, and there's sort of 2 types of reconnaissance. There's active, which is essentially involves gathering information from a target directly. It may even be using the likes of Nmap tools, but that's sort of a crossover between scanning. And then there's passive reconnaissance, which is sort of the likes of collecting through directly assessing a target. Indirectly looking at the target through open source intelligence, so OSINT, OSINT methodologies. Next, we come on to scanning, and so this is kind of the logical extension of reconnaissance. Is a bit more of an in-depth probing of of an organization, and that's being the second step, where essentially attackers are trying to find ways to gain the target's information. So this can be looking at user accounts, credentials, IP addresses, and this step of ethical hacking generally involves finding easy and quick ways to access the network and skim for information. Tools such as port scanners, network mappers, sweepers, dialers, and sort of general vulnerability scanners are used in that scanning phase. There's so things like vulnerability scanning, port scanning, network scanning all can be utilized sort of within this scanning phase, and sort of contributes to that more in-depth probing. Gaining access, again, using those vulnerabilities identified in both the reconnaissance and the reconnaissance of the scanning phases to get a foothold within to sort of get a foothold within the victim's network. So it could be sort of targeting systems, applications, networks, and generally sort of an attacker will use a variety of tools and methods to sort of gain access and enter that particular system. We've got sort of the questions coming on a little bit later. So things like Metasploit is one of those common tools that we use to gain access, and things like social engineering, which I'm going to come on to in a little bit in terms of things gaining some passwords. I'll do a little bit of a demonstration of one of the labs in that to showcase just how easy sort of a bit of credential harvesting can be. So ethical hackers and penetration testers can essentially try and secure potential entry points sort of through this sort of gaining access method when they can send sort of fake social engineering emails, which we'll come on to employees to help. I'm sure a number of you have got maybe utilized phishing tools in your day-to-day activities or have been, or your organizations do, to try and sort of see if there are any weak employees or weak points within the human firewall, which I think it's been termed as, to fall for those. Maintaining access. So once there is a foothold within a target system, the idea to try and maintain access as long as possible so that you can harvest sort of as much critical information. In this, so this sort of stage, hackers can so basically continuously exploit that system, launch DDoS attacks, use that system as a launch pad to sort of pivot into other systems, other networks, other machines, and there's and ultimately sort of utilizing things like sort of creating backdoors with Trojans and other tools to help exploit those vulnerable systems and stealing credentials, and that final stage is clearing tracks. So ultimately, if you can cover up sort of all of the activity that you have done, things that can be utilized, deleting cache and deleting caches and histories, using reverse HTTP shells. There's a number of things which can be incorporated in that. So those 5 steps of ethical hacking. Now, we've obviously there's obviously maybe sort of a bit of a grey area between ethical hacking and penetration testing. Now so we'll come on to the next slide where we have our ethical hacker course and our penetration testing course. So ethical hacking is sort of a bit of an umbrella term for penetration testing, and sort of represents a subset. With what we sort of show with our ethical hacking is that our certified ethical hacker is really sort of an introduction to those offensive capabilities. So once you once you sort of a bit like the nutty professor, you could be a fantastic ethical hacker, but if you can't conduct it in or it can't conduct the tools and techniques in a structured and methodical way and add that methodology which penetration testing does into your exploits, and then ultimately your report back to the organization isn't necessarily going to make as much sense as you would hope to. So ethical hacking is sort of very much an umbrella term. So penetration testing is sort of more of a formalized, formalized term. The term ethical, with hacking in there, ethical hacking is still not necessarily, maybe not necessarily recognized, or still a bit of a feared term. But ultimately, penetration testing is sort of adding in that crucial methodology. So coming on to a little bit of the certification now. So sorry, I'm just going to check that I've launched the lab in the background. Yes, I have. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. So coming on to our sort of this is our full vulnerability assessment and penetration testing track, which was fully updated, last year. Now we've got I know this is the second webinar in the series that we've run with GOPAS, and we've already covered off the Network Defender course. So the next step in that track is looking at the certified ethical hacker, and next week we have our certified penetration tester, where we have one of our instructors. It's far too technical for me to demonstrate. We have one of our certified penetration testing professionals delivering that webinar next week. So if you're looking for something far more technical and a deep dive into sort of things like the labs and the cyber range and that penetration test, please do join that webinar as well. But coming on to the new version 11 certified ethical hacking course, so we've had a bit of an overhaul in terms of what is incorporated into that. So you can see that we've included a number of new attack methodologies. We've actually included a new sort of a new attack operating system. So rather than using Kali Linux, we decided to use the parent operating system. We know Kali is a fantastic tool. With the parent operating system, we got a slightly richer experience with regards to sort of the online lab, which is why we transitioned to it. But if you do want sort of a comparison between parent and Kali, then please do. There is a really good. The first hit on Google is a really good article of the comparisons, but they both have similar toolkits. They're both free, so it is. From our perspective, it wasn't sort of a financial decision, but it's just something that we decided to transition to. Something which has been big in the news, so operational technology. So we added OT to our IoT modules. So we've always prided ourselves on having sort of a very hands-on and a very comprehensive ethical hacking course. So in terms of sort of expanding the modules, you'll see on the next slide that we sort of ultimately made that added operational technology to that to ensure that obviously with all of the attacks on industrial control systems, SCADA, air gaps, those sorts of sort of practical elements that have been incorporated into the IoT module, because they have become more and more prominent, and we even actually released just a sort of basically a straight SCADA course for an ICS SCADA course as well, and to complement that, because that's something that we are being asked for by a number of our clients. In terms of sort of the full update, we are transitioning, or we've made the lab environment much richer. We've added more labs. We'll come on to that in a little bit, and obviously updating sort of all the emerging emerging attack vectors, new forms of malware, the new sort of cloud computing overhaul as well in terms of the module changes, but ultimately the idea is that we've completely fully maintained sort of the core structure of the ethical hacking course, and updated the tools, updated the techniques, and ultimately that is sort of kept it sort of up as a bit of a market leader in terms of ethical hacking courses. So a little look at the module breakdown. Yeah, there's we've always had sort of comprehensive modules. You can see the one sort of major change that we have there in terms of the module structure is that we've the IoT hacking has become IoT and operational technology hacking. So if you sort of think back to some of those examples of what's been going on, so if you look at the Colonial Pipeline, if you look at the Florida water poisoning, these attacks on sort of on critical national infrastructure are becoming more and more prominent. So operational technology has become more and more prevalent as these attacks have risen. So yeah, certainly something that we had to include in the new update. And some of the updates on terms of the course and sort of the size of it, the labs had a completely new overhaul. And as you can see, we've gone from 140 labs, which was something very comprehensive. I'd say is a very comprehensive number of labs. So we do focus on the practical elements. It's not just about the knowledge; it's about the skills and abilities as well. So from 140 labs to 204, with 93 of those being completely brand new. So even more labs to sort of ensure that you get your teeth stuck into the practical element of the course. And if we'll just run through, if you just take a look at some of the technology updates, I will share these slides with GOPAS. So if they would like to share them with you, they can. But ultimately, sort of a comprehensive update of all of the technology as well. So I just want to transition to the. I'm just going to do a phishing demo. So the two reasons for sharing this with you is, so I'm just going to, you'll see my screen drop off, and I'll start sharing another screen. But there's two reasons I want to show you this to you. One is the first is because it's just to show you how comprehensive coverage the labs, or sorry, just to show you a little bit of an introduction to the lab environment. And the other reason is because of another reason is just essentially just to show you how easy it is to conduct a phishing attack. I'm sure a number of you have seen conducted phishing attacks. You may even have automated tools to do that yourselves. But yeah, it's just reasonably scary. So again, I'm sure we have a bit of a mixed audience. Maybe there's individuals on here who are thinking of getting into cybersecurity. There could be others on here who are far more advanced. So yeah, we'll try and cater to all audiences. So yeah, for those who are a little bit more advanced, definitely join the CPENT webinar next week. We will have one of our instructors running through some pretty advanced stuff, which is incorporated into the CPENT course, including that once you've gained access, pivoting between networks to different machines and all that sort of stuff, and showcasing the full enterprise environment that we have. But you can see here, we have, this is just sort of nothing, this is sort of our module 9, social engineering. So we're just going to quickly run through this lab in about 5-10 minutes. You can see you're given scenarios, you're given instructions. So as you run through the course with GOPAS and their instructor, they will give you the prerequisite theoretical knowledge. But if you wanted to sort of practice the labs on your own or in your own time as well, after you've run through the course, there are sort of step-by-step instructions here as well. So you can see it's telling us the Launchpad security operating system. Here's the password, etc. So I'm not going to concentrate on the instructions. You guys don't want to see me click through those. So I'm going to just go on to the resources side of things now. So with the resources, you can see that we've got a number of resources here, and so the idea is that we sort of launch these sorts of attacks from both from attacker's perspective, and then we play the role of the victim as well. So in this particular lab, we're going to launch the attack from the parent security operating system, and our victim machine is going to be Windows 10. So I'm just going to log into Parent Security. For those of you who don't know, Parent Security is a sort of a penetration testing tool that very similar to the likes of Kali Linux. And so again, for those of you who may not have seen or played around on these sorts of tools, it is it is sort of just a penetration testing tool which can be used by sort of the penetration pen testers the world over, and pen testers and ethical hackers the world over. If you're not familiar, I am just sort of I'm getting to the social engineering toolkit so that we can so it's essentially we can launch this particular attack. It's all reasonably simple, and so this is the social engineering toolkit. There's one of these in Kali Linux as well. So we're going to navigate, and what we're looking to do is we're going to launch a credential harvesting attack against the dummy website. So we're going to do a social engineering attack. We're going to do a website attack vector number 2. We're going to do a credential harvester attack number 3, and then we're going to do a website cloner number 2. It's asking for the IP address of which is the IP address of this Parent Security operating system. It very generously gives it to us there, 10.10.10.13. And then it's asking us for the URL that we want to copy. And in this instance, is www.moviescope.com, which is an EC Council owned website. So we're not going to get in any trouble for attacking this particular website. Hopefully that's everything is still sharing okay. Cool, and that's it. So we've launched that. So we've created our attack, and now all we need to do is we need to go out and send it out to our unsuspecting victim, who will be logging into Windows 10 as us very, very shortly. So what we need to do is, so for MovieScope, we want to go and create something reasonably convincing email to send out to the to those particular attackers. Now we're going to go into log into some demo accounts. So we would have gone on and created a MovieScope email, or it would have just been simply quite just a Gmail account, for example. Obviously this is not particularly convincing because of the let me just double check that's right. Yeah, ECC demo, and then we're going to log in there. Sorry, trying to type and log in at the same time is proving difficult for me. So we've created a MovieScope email account. So obviously when we sign this up, the first name, surname looks like it's coming from MovieScope. I've created some previous emails for you. Something trying to look very reasonably convincing. Here's a £10 voucher for MovieScope. Well, thank you for sticking with us during the pandemic. Please sort of download the voucher here. Now there should be a obviously I haven't copied it properly. There should be sort of even a company logo in there as well. But as you can see, what we've done in this particular lab is actually we've changed it so it looks like the text is sort of reasonably convincing, moviescope.com with the £10 voucher. But actually, it was as you remember, that is the hacker's IP address, which we sort of typed in earlier. So we go click OK. We send that out to our unsuspecting victim. Obviously. And that's it. That's our attack launch. So we sent it to Philip ECC demo at gmail.com. Obviously, what we would have done is we would have gone and purchased a database from the dark web. Maybe just email addresses cost next to nothing. For hundreds of thousands or millions of MovieScope emails, it may have cost us nothing, $5-10, something along those lines. So, and if you think about it in terms of sort of in terms of passwords, so we've now logged in as the victim machine. So we're going to go log in as Philip and go click on the link, and then we'll toggle back to the Parent Security machine to see what the results are. But ultimately, if you think about, I think standard marketing practice, there's about 1 to 2, or the standard marketing click-through rates tend to be about 1 to 2% of individuals will click through your marketing emails, or that's a reasonably strong success rate. So if you think about it, if you're sending it out to hundreds of thousands or millions of individuals, you will have you will potentially have thousands or tens of thousands of individuals click through and potentially and if once they get to that stage, they could potentially send you their details. I'm sorry, as always with live demos, it's running a little bit slow, but hopefully we're there now. So we're going to go log in as Philip ECC demo, and then we are going to go and then we're going to go click on that particular link as the unsuspecting individual. So That's us logged in. Let's see. There we go. We're through. Try not to go through two-factor authentication. It occasionally happens when we log in. You can see how many times I've done this demo. So yeah, it's obviously there's all of these are from moviescope.com to this particular dummy account. But if we're clicking through, the unsuspecting victim doesn't notice it's a Gmail account. They click on the link. It looks, this is a carbon copy of, or a complete scrape, a page scrape of moviescope.com. So it looks like it's come from that, but obviously you can see the hacker's IP address up there. So to go log in as Philip, and we're going to log in as, I say, Philip's password is QWERTY, very popular password. Log in. Now, the eagle-eyed of you would have seen that it's gone from 10.10.10.30 to www.moviescope.com, and actually, what that unsuspecting individual would do would go and log in to Moviescope as they usually would. Yeah, maybe there's a delivery driver at the door. Maybe the kids are still schooling from home. I'm not sure. They get distracted and forget about it. And ultimately, yeah, it does happen quite. That is a possibility. Maybe they're late for a Zoom or another Teams meeting, something like that. So we're just going to use another example. Susanna, I'm going to use you as a test, as a dummy profile on this, and say Susanna's password is password, which I've definitely typed wrong. There we go. And log in. Again, you can see we've gone to moviescope.com. So we just sort of click back to the IP address. Now, if we toggle back to our parent security operating system, we should, if I won't hold my breath, have, you can see here we have two inputs. We have Susanna password, and we have Philip and QWERTY, and that's just how easy it is to launch an attack like that. Now, if you think that's gone out to tens of thousands, if not millions of people, it's quite comparable. There are it's quite scary to think how easy it is to get those emails and how convincing you can potentially make them. And now that's just one module. That's just one lab in this particular module. Bear in mind we have over 204 labs. Some of those I'm unfortunately not technical enough to demonstrate to you, but it's across systems hacking, IoT, and OT hacking. We saw the module list earlier, but ultimately there is a sort of a huge list of labs and a huge list of modules that you can that you will essentially be utilizing. So I'm just going to share my PowerPoint again. So we should be back on the PowerPoint, which is great. Yeah, it's all showing up now. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to sort of flick back through, but just to sort of flick on from those, a couple of examples of COVID scams. There's one on the left, which always comes out of the UK around tax return time, reasonably convincing using government logos. One on the right, which is slightly less convincing, asking for a Bitcoin donation to the CDC in the US for the coronavirus pandemic relief. And just to give you sort of a couple of examples, then I was even a real world one. I was selling my sofa on Gumtree back in December, and yeah, this individual tried to scam me. I'm not entirely sure how they wanted me to give them money to buy my sofa. It didn't really quite make very much sense, but you can see the exact technique which I just showed you, sort of service@paypal.co.uk. They tried to sort of scam me out of money by sort of making up a fake Gmail account and asking me to send money there. So not quite the same as sort of sending the phishing email, but ultimately it is, yeah, so they utilize that same technique of creating a fake Gmail account. So just onto a little bit more about the ethical hacking course. So not very recently, but we actually released a practical not so long ago, probably about almost 2 years ago now, and we've obviously it's been subsequently been updated. But the idea is that we've sort of got you become a certified ethical hacker master. So once you've done that the 4-hour multiple choice exam, there is the practical which if you sit both a theoretical exam and you get the and you prove that you have the skills and abilities with the practical, the 6-hour 20 challenge practical exam, you can get awarded the CEH master, and so essentially the combination of those two will result in sort of you attaining that CEH master. Now we do have a leaderboard, and we do have various we do sort of have various other mechanisms, but ultimately I would love for the next delegate to be on that top 10 leaderboard. And so it is sort of obviously the calculation is sort of how well you did on the ethical hacking theoretical exam and how well you did on the practical exam. But ultimately, it's sort of a test of who. A test of sort of both those skills. And funnily enough, one of the gentlemen, or the gentleman who is third on that leaderboard that I'm showing you, will be giving the certified penetration tester certification webinar next week. Björn obviously scored very highly on the ethical hacking theory and practical, and he's also I believe he's currently top scorer on the certified penetration tester certification as well as it stands, which is a huge accolade, considering that is a 24-hour exam, or split out into two 12-hour slots. But I would love for the next individual to come from GOPAS to be on that leaderboard. So I'm just going to pick something out of this. So I'm sure a number of you, anyone who's heard of EC Council has heard of the CEH. In terms of sort of how our accolades globally with regards that certification, we're held in extremely high regard, and it's something which I will focus on is that hands-on program. The fact we have 204 labs incorporated into the certification, so that you can not only get that theoretical knowledge, but also that the practical knowledge as well. It's something which is ultimately it's certainly a testament to our development team. But we're trying to ensure that there are individuals who are entering the workforce to have the practical. I do have those practical skills. Now, in terms of the shortage in terms of the cybersecurity workforce, so there's actually this is unfortunately this isn't quite the most recent slide from IC Squared, but the IC Squared's sort of bring out a workforce gap report. This is actually reduced for the first year in many years. This is reduced from 4 million to 3.1 million, something, 1.2 million, something along those lines. So these I need to update these. They only recently sort of released that report, and their 2021 report is coming out imminently as well. But ultimately, if you compare that figure, so again, let's pretend that is 3 million. It's ultimately what they were expecting by 2022 of that workforce gap of 1.8 million. That has accelerated exponentially, and which obviously very worrying. Although it's that 4 million figure has reduced to 3.12 in recent years. Since in 1 year, there's still a lot of work to do, and you can see sort of how geographically across each region there is a lot out. There are a lot of missing roles out there. So who's currently looking for ethical hackers in the Czech Republic? So I just pulled these from I think it was just LinkedIn this morning. And so there's I'm sure a number of you will recognize those: Verizon, Accenture, Deutsche Börse, Acronis. A number of organizations looking for ethical hackers. So yeah, the certifications are in high demand, and obviously we try to ensure that those are individuals entering the workplace are have had the correct or are entering with the knowledge, skills, and abilities they need to hit the ground running in the roles that they are looking to take on. So that is sort of essentially the end of the webinar, but we do have the quiz coming up where I've got 5 questions which are based around the 5 phases of ethical hacking. Maybe you do want to run through some of those just to showcase and see test your knowledge. I don't have sort of a poll system set up on this, so just sort of note it down in your We will go through by question, but ultimately we'll go through these 5 phases. So first question will be on reconnaissance, and then we'll go on to scanning, gaining actors, maintaining access, and clearing tracks. But yeah, the first question, in terms of sort of footprinting and reconnaissance, which of the following is not an example of passive reconnaissance? And maybe if at the end of this you can just put down a note your score at the end, and yeah, if you do well, maybe it might be an idea to sort of look in. To brush up your skills and go through the course. If you are looking to get into cybersecurity and you get a couple of these right, maybe it's the process of deduction. Congratulations. But ultimately, these are just a disclaimer. These aren't included in the actual exam questions. These are just example exam questions that we could be asking, and there are 125 in the actual theoretical exam. But footprinting and reconnaissance, which one of the following is not an example of passive reconnaissance? A, who is queries; B, website copying; C, Google hacking; and D, news groups. we could run through all of that. We could run through all of these, but I'm sure, hopefully you've had enough time to answer. Very difficult to get feedback when everyone else is muted. But the answer is website copying. I don't, just judging on the time, I do want to try and keep it sort of to 45 minutes. So I'll just run through these, running through each individual one. But ultimately, sort of the others are we can run through sort of in terms of who is who is queries computer virus news groups, or just in general news groups, and obviously sort of utilizing Google search and stuff is are those examples of passive reconnaissance. Phase 2, scanning. Which of the following is not an example of a scanning tool? Nmap, hping, openvs, and BEF. Okay, we'll just give you a few more seconds to answer that. I think we'll drop that there. The answer is the browser exploitation framework. So that is basically a penetration testing tool that focuses on the web browser. That is, one is also an example of a scanning tool. Nmap is obviously something which is very very popular. And we'll just move on to the next question. Phase 3, gaining access. Which of the following is a password cracking tool? And yes, it was actually my team who sent me this question. But John the Ripper, Nmap, Airmon, and Hydra. And the answer is John the Ripper and Hydra. And so hopefully those of you at home, some of you got that. And we'll go on to the next question. Phase 4, maintaining access. Which of the following tools can provide the attacker with a remote shell and allow for file transfers to and from the compromised machine? Please select all that apply. I will give you another few seconds. And yes, we have Stuxnet and Metasploit. So Stuxnet obviously famously utilized in terms of sort of that very that worm which was utilized to hack into Iranian nuclear power facilities, and then Metasploit is sort of a framework which is that powerful tool which can be it's used by criminals and ethical hackers sort of to probe those systematic vulnerabilities. And then we'll come on to covering tracks. Which of the following tools are capable of clearing log files? A, B, C, or D there. Kismet, DD, Kalpati, or PS log list. And go on to and that's it. Final. So hopefully, I'm sure there's some of you got 5 out of 5. I know there's been some chat coming across. So apologies if there were comments on that. There were some comments on that. Unfortunately, those questions are sent over by my team. But ultimately, thank you very much. I hope that some of that, well, I'm sure a number of you got 5 out of 5 on that. And it certainly seems like from some of the chat comments. But if you have any questions or queries, please do reach out. Reach out to me. Reach out to the team at GOPAS. But hopefully it's been a little bit of an insightful webinar for you. Hopefully you've found out a little bit more about the ethical hacking course that we run with GOPAS, and yes, hopefully we will have a few more certified certified ethical hackers in the not so distant future. We do have the more advanced CPENT webinar coming next week. As I mentioned, Björn will be delivering that webinar and showcasing a lot more around the practical elements, the tools and techniques utilized and leveraged within that. And obviously, he being sort of one of the more sophisticated individuals who has passed out, or one of the top scorers who in that exam, I'm sure he was in the perfect place to advise those who are. And he will. He's not only does he have his CPENT, he has his OSCP and a number of other certifications, so he can certainly draw comparisons to those and his experiences with them. But otherwise, thank you very much for joining. If there's any questions, please do fire them into the question chat box, and I'll endeavour to answer them. So thank you very much. No questions. That's great. Well, I will stop sharing my screen and end the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.